So I thought I would try something a little different. Well, not different, rather just something unique. On my blog, I do something where every month I talk about the books that I've been reading. And I thought it would be fun to kind of do that here, but instead of every month, just kind of every time I finish a book. So what I'm probably going to call this is book talks, until I can think of something more creative. Sometimes it might be later at night, sometimes it might be earlier in the morning, just kind of depends on whatever time I think is the best for a book talk. I do want to just kind of put out, not a disclaimer, but rather a note. I'm sitting outside, as you can tell by the gloriousness of the sunshine. Spring is breaking into my corner of the world in a glorious display. The sky is blue, the grass is green, the trees are blooming, the sun is warm, the flowers are amazing, and so I'm trying to spend as much time outside as possible because I'm going to be working a lot over the summer, and so I'm trying to soak it all in right now. So you will hear cars going by, you will hear birds. I'm talking louder, so you can hopefully hear me. I also want you to know that my channel is not an ASMR channel. I do ASMR videos, as you can see from the couple that I've done, but it's not designed to be ASMR, so I will be doing other stuff. And this, Book Talks, is going to be one of those things. The book that I'm going to talk about today is actually quickly becoming one of my favorites. I finished it a couple weeks ago, and it took me a very, very long time to read, 9 months. But it's one of my absolute favorites, and I wanted to talk to you guys about it. I should also let you know that the books that I'm reading aren't going to be your typical popular books. I've never read The Hunger Games, I've never read the Diversion series, I've never read, what else is popular? I read books that function at my reading level, and I have a much higher reading level than most of my peers. So my hope is that by talking about these books, you're encouraged to go read them yourself. Because I feel like some of the most incredible things, intellectually or literature or anything, is kind of really pushed aside nowadays, and that's such a shame. I read a lot of classic books, and I have nobody to talk to about. Let me try this again. I have nobody to talk to with about these books because nobody's reading them. You know what I mean? And so, yeah. So the book that I'm talking about today is Les Misérables by Victor Hugo. As you can see, it is crazy thick. This book is 1,463 pages. Yeah. And I read it in, like I said, 9 months. I started it, maybe late May, early June of 2016, and I finished it at the end of March. Les Misérables is one of my favorite things in the entire world. Prior to reading this book, I loved the musical. I still love the musical. I love the songs, I love the story, I love the characters. Like, there's just something incredible about Les Misérables. And I apologize, I know I'm not saying that right, I'm just saying it as fast as I can. Now, I've known about Les Misérables for about 12 years, and I remember the first time I saw it, my aunt took me to see it with my cousin, and I was very young, and I just sat captivated through the entire show. The songs just absolutely haunted me. And for weeks after, it was one of those things that leaves you feeling rather mushy. Like, you can't think straight because it's always in your mind. You can't function really well because there's this thing occupying a good part of your being, right? And I remember feeling upset because my aunt had to leave 10-12 minutes earlier than the show was done, so I never actually saw how it finished. Until years later, she took us to see it again. And I cried. I will admit I cried. And then my parents took me to see it at a local theater several years ago. I have the London Hall version with Colm Wilkinson as Valjean. I have the 2012 movie. I have multiple recordings of the music. Broadway, a shortened anniversary CD. I want to say 85th anniversary, but that's not right. And then I have the full version, and so I'm always surrounding myself by Les Mis. Oh, and I also have a flute music book, so there's always something going on for Les Mis. Anyway, back to the book. So with Les Mis, when you read this book, you need to realize that Hugo isn't a typical storyteller. He opens the book with talking about Monsieur Murel, who is really the Bishop of Digne, the guy that Valjean steals the candlesticks from. And the way that Hugo writes is he writes in a way that presents the background of every character before the immediate present. So you understand who the character is before their actions, before they're really even introduced to the stage. So then they feel like close friends before anything even really happens. And I really like that. Even in regards to Thénardier, you understand him before you experience the viciousness of him. And the other thing about Hugo is this book is separated into 4 books. Is it 4? Maybe it's 5. Hold up a second. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 5 books. See? All of those, and that's the books. And then all of these are chapters. And then under each chapter there are several sub-chapters. So there's a lot of stuff going on in this book. And this story spans 20 years? At least 20 years. You get the moment... You get... well, the story opens with Monsieur Morel, and then he becomes Bishop of Digne, and then he meets Valjean. But then you get Valjean's background. So it's like 25, 30 years. So you have to really keep track. And if you're reading it for a long period of time, you need to remember the timeline of things. You need to remember who the characters are. When I was reading it, I would go like weeks without reading it because of school and without really any time to sit down and read with textbook reading and work and all other life stuff. I would go to sit down and read several weeks later and forget who the characters were that I was reading about, because there's characters in this book who aren't in the musical, such as Cousin Théodule, I'm not saying that right, Monsieur Mabouf, Monsieur Fauchelevent, though he is talked about in the musical, he's a lot bigger presence in the book. Alzema, and I'm drawing a blank on everybody else. You meet Cosette's dad, and that's an interesting part of the story, because you get a really good representation of who Fantine is. Let me see if I can find a good line for that. Oh, here it is. Fantine was beautiful without being really conscious of it. Those rare dreamers, the mysterious priests of the beautiful, who silently compare all things with perfection, would have dimly perceived in this working girl, through the transparency of Parisian grace, an ancient sacred euphony. This daughter of obscurity was breeding. She possessed both types of beauty, style and rhythm. Style is the force of the ideal, rhythm its movement. We have said that Fantine was joy. She was also modesty. So Fantine was, simple and pretty and modest. And in the group of friends that she was with when she becomes pregnant is a group of dreamers. They met in the springtime, hung out during the summer, and they were spent time in meadows and on picnics and talking about beautiful things. And when you think of Parisian dreamers and love and romance, it's the typical thing that you think of. And what is his name? Oh, Ptolemies? Ptolemies. So I'm gonna say it. He's Cosette's dad. He's a bit of a jerk because, well, I won't. He just kind of up and leaves. And Fantine is left to deal with the consequences, as we know. So that was really cool to read that part, because it's a part of the story that you don't really know. And to get a background of one of the most beloved characters, it was such a treat. And then with Thénardier's, this is a cool part that I really enjoyed. So it's Thénardier and his wife, who's never really named. She's just called Thénardier. Stinks for her. But Eponine is the eldest, then it's Elzéma, then it's Gavroche, and they have 2 younger brothers. Gavroche is kind of casted on the street, as we know, and the 2 younger brothers really aren't named, and they're given to another family, and then end up on the streets. But that family is just fascinating to me, how each character kind of develops, and their benefit to society, and to the characters around them. Thénardier is just a vicious little piece of human. He's very conniving. There's a piece in here that just really explains who Thénardier is. I went to find it. Hold up a second. Oh, here it is. Okay. Here it is. So when Thénardier tells Marius about Valjean, we know that scene very well. Although, technically, this scene happens weeks, if not months, after the wedding. And here's about Thénardier, which I just found very interesting. The touch of a wicked man is often enough to corrupt a good deed and to make an evil result spring from it. With Marius' money, Thénardier became a slave trader in America. So that's Thénardier. And the thing about Eponine has always been my favorite character. I relate so much with On My Own, and no, I won't sing it for you. In the book, she's angrier. You don't really get that she's in love with Marius until she's dying. And then it's very clear that she led Marius to the barricade so that he would die because she didn't want him to be with Cosette. Let me find that. It's before that. Give me a moment. It's in here somewhere. Anyway, I can't find it. Eponine was jealous of Marius, and she didn't want him to be with Cosette. And she died jealous and angry instead of content. And there's a very big contrast in that, because Marius didn't even give her time. After she died, he put her kind of, I don't want to say in a pile with the other bodies, but he definitely moved her away from where they were, and he just moved on to find Cosette. Like, there was no mourning for her, really. Just, he noted that it's sad that she ended up there. But that was about it. Now, let's get to Hugo himself, because I've fallen in love with Victor Hugo. His writing is beautiful. It's simple and profound and philosophical and enlightened. He has a quote that I really, really like. And as somebody who writes a lot, this is very near to my heart, and I think it really captures a writer. And his quote is, "A writer is a world trapped in a person, inside a person." I mean, it's true on two levels. As a writer, you have so many ideas and so many worlds inside of your head that you feel everything so much. But at the same time, when you look at Hugo and how he wrote Les Misérables, he understood the entire world. He understood the nuances of Parisian bureaucracy and each person, and he understood history, and he understood the future, and he could write with this very broad perspective of France and the world, but then focus in on the smallest, poorest person, and still write as if he had been in that experience. He is so profound and so incredible that my book is just dotted with underlined things. There are pages in here that are just filled to the brim of underlined things. He is so good in his writing and in his understanding. He can just go on and on and on and on about oh, there's a bug. Sorry. He can go on and on and on about something, and you can feel this build-up of his ideas and in his writing and in his philosophy and his thoughts, and all of a sudden it enters this incredibly profound statement, and it just ties everything together so well. There's a part where Gavroche finds his little brothers running in the street, not knowing that they're his brothers, and he takes them to his home, which is an elephant statue, which is a historical thing. If you Google the Parisian elephant, you'll come up with something very historical. It was built by Napoleon Bonaparte. The emperor had had a dream of genius, and this titanic elephant, armed, prodigious, brandishing his trunk, bearing his tower, and making the joys and vivifying waters gush out on all sides around him. He wanted to incarnate the people. God had done a greater thing with it. He sheltered a child. And that's at a very long paragraph of Napoleon and the emperor and what he did. And to end it with, God had done a grander thing with it. He sheltered a child. Just feels, you can see his perspective of grandeur is not in the big, it is in the small. Hugo is how do you explain Hugo without using the same words? Les Misérables by Victor Hugo is an epic. And I believe that you're not reading Les Misérables if you're not reading Victor Hugo. It's like you're not watching Jason Bourne if you're not watching Matt Damon. You're not watching Indiana Jones if you're not watching Harrison Ford. you're not reading Harry Potter if you're not reading J.K. Rowling. It's the exact same concept. You're not reading Les Misérables if you're not reading Victor Hugo. You can read the abridged version all you want, but it's not Les Misérables. I mean, it could have been... You could have selected chapters from Hugo's writing to create the abridged version, but then it's not even Les Mis. You know what I mean? Like, Les Mis is the entire story. It is every last word in here, every last note that he makes. It is every last character, every last line. It is every single thing in here is Les Misérables, and to take anything out and it's no longer the story, it's no longer the characters, it's no longer Victor Hugo's writing. There's something, you know, and Valjean is a character that needs to be written by Victor Hugo. It feels like Hugo made Valjean to be a mirror of himself. And now I don't know Hugo's life well enough to understand if that's true. But in the way that Valjean is described and analyzed, and the way that he's written, it feels like there is some very personal connection to the character. Valjean has always been a bit intimidating to me, but in this story, he feels like a friend who I admire and respect, and just want to sit beside and listen to. And there was a line in here that made me sob more than anything. It's the day of the wedding. And now Valjean, that was a hard day for Valjean. As we know, in the musical, he didn't want to give Cosette up. She had been like a ray of sunshine to him, breaking into his dark past, and he wanted to love her forever, just the two of them. And so it was very difficult for him to give her up to Marius. And so after the wedding, he didn't feast with them. He made an excuse saying he wasn't feeling well, so he went back to the house that he and Cosette had shared before they got married. And when he went to his house, he kept the clothes that Cosette had worn when he took her from Thénardier, a little black morning outfit for Fantine, and he'd kept it all of those years as a reminder. And so when he got back to his house, he pulled, after the wedding, watching the marriage, and he got back to the house and he laid the clothing out on his bed, so very delicate and gentle. And then this quote made me want to just sob. Then his venerable white head fell on the bed. This old stoical heart broke. His face was swallowed up, so to speak, in Cosette's clothes, and anybody who had passed along the staircase at that moment would have heard irrepressible sobbing. And that, to me, is just powerful, because you see Valjean, who is this incredibly passionate man, but yet kind of rather unemotional, and to see him break down like that just opens up the love for Cosette, and that just, it makes me cry. It makes me cry. It took me a couple of days to start reading another book after I finished this one, because like any really good book, it makes you feel mushy after it's done. It makes you feel like you can't do anything properly because of the stuff that you're thinking about, because of the characters, because of how it ended, because of the writing, because of the story. And like how after you see a good movie, it just stays in your head for a while. This book stayed in my head for a while and in my heart for a while, and I didn't want to start something new and disturb that reverence that I was feeling, that respect, that admiration that I was feeling for Victor Hugo and for Les Misérables. I am getting so excited to see it again on stage. I don't know when that's going to happen, but I need some more Les Misérables musical in my life. So I've been singing the songs nonstop. I mean, you kind of have to when you've read the book, right? I watched the movie right around the time that I was finishing the book, and I cried. I cried. I really did. On my blog, which I can link in the description, of all of the different stuff that I outlined, I concluded it with the finale song from the show, and that made me cry watching it, because finishing a book like Les Mis, it's like closing a chapter in your life, because you've devoted so much time to it that when it's finally done, it feels like you are actually, in reality, closing the book. And so that was a cool moment to sit in that moment and just to hear the music from the show while typing the final words that I'd underlined, and so I can only imagine what Hugo felt when he'd finished writing it. So yeah, I'd love to know if you guys have ever read Les Mis. Have you ever seen the show? Have you ever, who's your favorite character? If you've read the book, what's your favorite part? I know my favorite part. Yeah, I'm looking to start, I would love to read Hunchback of Notre Dame by Hugo, but I'm going to wait a couple years to do that, because if it took me 9 months to read this, and I have a whole other list of books I want to read, including Interpretation of Dreams by Sigmund Freud, I need to finish Don Quixote by Miguel de Cervantes, I have a couple of Oliver Sacks books I need to read, Knife of Never Letting Go by Patrick Ness, I'm working on The Wonder of All Things by James Mott, and I have a couple of Ravi Zacharias and Dan Brown books I need to read, so it's going to be a while before I get to anything big and massive again. But I think that's okay. I think it keeps it really exciting. You know what I mean? Okay, so I feel like that was enough rambling about a book, although I could keep right on rambling. Yeah, let me know if you've read this book, and what you think. And let me know if you want me to keep doing these, because I think it's fun, but I read. And I don't know how many of you guys read. So, yeah. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later. Ciao for now.